Imagine you're living in the Middle Ages. It's your birthday, but does anyone even care? While modern birthdays are a big deal, in medieval times, things were a little different, especially depending on your social class. From royal feasts to humble blessings, today we'll uncover how birthdays, or better, name days, were celebrated by kings, merchants, and peasants. Why name days were more important than birthdays. Unlike today, most medieval people didn't celebrate their birthdays at all. The church actively discouraged birthday celebrations, considering them a pagan tradition. Ancient civilizations like the Romans and Greeks had marked birthdays with feasts, astrology, and even sacrifices to gods. But medieval Christian society viewed these as self-indulgent and superstitious. Instead, the focus was on name days, which were tied to the feast day of the saint a person was named after. A person's name day had deep religious significance. Being named after a saint was believed to bring divine protection, and celebrating their feast day was seen as an act of devotion. Instead of a private party, name days were often recognized by the entire community. Many people attended a special church service, and in noble or royal households, name days were semi-public affairs. For the most important figures, they could even be marked by feasts, processions, or public displays of generosity. Another reason name days were more important than birthdays was practicality. Many medieval people didn't even know their exact birth date. Parish records, when they existed, kept track of baptisms instead of births. And since the church's calendar was widely known, it was much easier to remember a name day than a personal birthday. Even monarchs often preferred celebrating their name day over their birthday. King Louis IX of France, later canonized as Saint Louis, took his name day celebrations to another level. His feast was not just a personal event, but a public display of faith and generosity. In fact, historical illustrations depict Louis IX personally distributing food to the poor, an act that symbolized both his piety and the expectation that rulers should care for their subjects. He hosted grand religious ceremonies, attended church services, held massive feasts, and personally distributed alms to the poor. These celebrations reinforced his divine right to rule and his reputation as a benevolent king. While name days remain important in many cultures today, the shift towards birthdays came much later. Improved record keeping, secularization, and changing social values made birthdays more popular over time. But in medieval society, your name day was the day that truly mattered. How different social classes celebrated. How you experienced a name day in the Middle Ages depended entirely on your social status. While name days were recognized across all levels of society, the way they were observed varied dramatically. For the nobility, a name day could be a lavish event with political and religious importance, while for commoners, it was a much simpler occasion, centered around faith and community. But regardless of status, name days were a widely understood and acknowledged part of medieval life, something that could not be said for birthdays. But before we dive into how different classes celebrated, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this look into medieval traditions. Royal and noble name days. For royalty and high-ranking nobility, name days were major public events that reinforced power, piety, and prestige. These celebrations often began with a formal church service, where priests and bishops offered blessings in honor of the person's patron saint. A noble or royal might receive gifts from vassals or foreign allies, often in the form of fine textiles, rare spices, gold, or prized animals, like falcons or horses. Beyond personal celebration, monarchs and lords used name days as opportunities to show generosity and to solidify alliances. It was common for rulers to pardon prisoners, hold grand tournaments, or make donations to the church. These acts were not purely benevolent. They reinforced the idea that the ruler was divinely favored. One of the grandest medieval feasts on record was hosted by King Henry III of England in 1246. Though not specifically for a name day, it shows how feasting was central to medieval celebrations. His banquet supplies included 5,000 chickens, 1,100 partridges, 400 hares and rabbits, 10,000 eels, 36 swans, 54 peacocks, and 90 boars. While not every noble's name day reached this scale, it demonstrates the extravagance of medieval feasts and the expectation of large-scale hospitality. The merchant and guild class. Among the merchant and guild classes, name days were more personal but still significant. A wealthy merchant might host a meal for family and close business associates, a special church service, or receive well wishes from fellow guild members. Some guilds formally acknowledged members' name days, either with a small toast, a symbolic gift, or a brief recognition during meetings. Others took the opportunity to make charitable donations, offering money to the church or distributing food to the poor. Unlike the nobility, merchants did not hold grand feasts or public events, but a successful merchant could still use a name day to reinforce social and professional ties. It was an occasion to demonstrate stability, piety, and goodwill, strengthening their position in a world where status and reputation mattered just as much in business as they did in politics. Peasants and commoners. For peasants and commoners, name days were quiet but meaningful. Since they had little money for elaborate feasts, the day was still marked with a modest meal, a special prayer, and a small gathering. A person celebrating their name day would attend Mass, where the priest might offer a blessing for those who shared the saint's feast day. Although there was little expectation of a feast, families might prepare a slightly better meal than usual, such as baking fresh bread or setting aside extra ale. In some villages, those with the same name might gather informally in the local tavern, sharing drinks and exchanging simple well wishes. These gatherings reinforced the communal nature of medieval life, where shared traditions mattered more than individual achievements. Birthdays, by contrast, were almost completely ignored. Outside of royalty and a few noble families, most medieval people didn't even know their exact birth date, and there was no expectation to mark it. Without calendars in common use, and with the church's emphasis on religious identity over personal milestones, birthdays simply weren't relevant. How these traditions survive today. While medieval name days were central to social and religious life, they didn't disappear with the end of the Middle Ages. In many parts of the world, they remain just as important as, or even more important than, birthdays. Though modern society now places greater emphasis on celebrating birth dates, name days continue to hold strong in cultures where religious traditions shape personal milestones. The shift towards birthdays as the primary personal celebration was gradual. It wasn't until the Renaissance that birthdays gained recognition outside of royalty. As record-keeping improved and societies became more secular, people became more aware of their exact birth dates, and personal milestones became more valued. This, combined with the rise of individualism in Western culture, led to the widespread birthday celebration we know today. So, there you have it. In the Middle Ages, name days were far more important than birthdays, a time for religious devotion, public celebration, and in some cases, grand feasts and acts of charity. From King Louis IX feeding the poor to peasants sharing drinks at a local tavern, name days were a meaningful part of medieval life. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more medieval mysteries. Check out my sources below. See you in the next one.